You're listening to Teracota Chronicles, where broken pieces find their way back to wholeness. Is it ever possible to find yourself walking into a wall, even though you see it, you know it's there, and yet you're still being guided in some form to trust it? Walk into the wall. Just walk into the wall. Just trust that the wall is going to allow you to pass through it. It's not going to hit you. It's not going to knock you down. Just walk into the wall. That sounds ridiculous, right? Well, that is pretty much what my next marriage was. I have to be careful because when I talk about this, I know I am going to sound like a fool. And so my ego is trying to protect me from the truth of it. And I've been struggling trying to get this part out because I know what it sounds like from the outside. But if this is going to be a memoir, then I owe you the truth. And the truth is that I had become numb to love. Now, keep in mind, between my first and second marriages, I had lived. I'd traveled, I'd gone to Dubai, I had experiences that expanded my world and reminded me that there was more to life than just surviving. And somewhere in that season, I reconnected with an idea from my youth, the idea that there was a friend, not a completion, someone already whole, just another person, a friend, a good person, someone I was meant to join with and move through life alongside them. Part of that idea came from a movie, a film that deeply affected me when I was younger. It was a 1987 film called Made in Heaven. Now, the premise, it's that these two souls meet in heaven before life and they're separated. And they spent an entire lifetime after they incarnated trying to find their way back to one another. They have no memory of each other and what they actually shared in heaven or in the spirit. There were moments they would pass each other without knowing as you're watching this movie and you want to just scream at the TV. There they are. Don't choose that person. This is your person. And you could see what they couldn't see. And then eventually they found each other. A touch, looking in their eyes, something helped their memory return and their recognition return. And then love between the two of them returned. I loved that idea. I mean, it seemed fantastical, right? But it seemed also, I don't know why. I just felt like, yeah, that's the way it is. That's what happened. That has to be what happened. I believed it. I believed there was someone out there who would feel familiar, someone who would feel like home, someone who would recognize me. So there's something else that I need to explain before I tell you about meeting him. Today, people talk a lot about limerence, that rush, that obsession, that feeling where someone occupies your thoughts and you find yourself wanting to know everything about them, right? I am not saying limerence is love. It isn't. Love and limerence are not the same thing. But limerence is often the spark that makes us curious enough to discover whether love is possible. And when I met my second husband, I didn't feel it. That should have told me something. But by that point in my life, I had been taught to distrust my emotions. Where that came from, in my first marriage, I had absorbed his idea, the idea, that feelings were unreliable and emotions could not be trusted. That was the rule, right? And love was not a feeling, but a decision, a commitment, a choice. And while there is truth in that, I took it further than I should have. I began to dismiss my own emotional responses altogether. Like, I stopped asking myself how I felt. I stopped paying attention to attraction, to excitement, anticipation, or longing. And I would convince myself that those things were immature, unimportant, dangerous, even, right? So when I met a man who didn't inspire those feelings, I didn't see it as a warning sign. I saw it as evidence that I was finally being mature. Now, remember, my first experience, my first husband, I had all of the limerence, all of the things were there. And, throughout that experience, I just talked myself out of it. Like, yeah, that's not necessary. So here I sit, and, you know, I basically told myself this was healthy love. This is what it looks like: calm, practical, reasonable, stable. And yes, that's true. But what I didn't realize was that I was throwing the compass out entirely. Because while limerence is not love, the complete absence of curiosity can tell its own story. So I wasn't drawn toward him. I wasn't fascinated by him. I wasn't wondering what made him tick. I wasn't staying up at night wanting to know who he was underneath his facade or surface. I simply saw a future that made sense. And at that stage of my life, I mistook that for enough. So when this gentleman entered my life and pursued me, I started wondering if perhaps this was that made in heaven story. Not because he swept me off my feet, not because I was overcome with passion, but because for the first time in a long time, someone wanted me without me trying to convince them to want me. You see, I wasn't doing the karmic pattern the same way. He pursued me. He wanted me. He made me mix tapes. He opened doors. He paid attention. Now, before you judge me, let me remind you where I was emotionally, because the bar was in hell. I had been through so much that the simple act of being considered felt extraordinary. And that's where the story becomes uncomfortable. Because if I'm being completely honest, the arrangement made sense. There, I said it. I know that's not the romantic answer. It's certainly not the answer I want to tell you that I chose. I wanted this chapter to be about destiny. I wanted it to be about soulmates. I wanted it to be about signs, synchronicities, divine timing. But the truth is more complicated than that. I wasn't chasing a man. I wasn't chasing a future. I was a divorced mother raising two boys. I still dreamed of having a daughter. I dreamed of having a family that stayed together. I still dreamed of a home, the partnership, and the life I thought I had lost the first time around. And whether women admit it or not, we are aware of time tick, tick, ticking. I knew there was still time. I could still get pregnant. But I also knew there wasn't endless time. I wanted a baby. And while society considered it an appropriate season of my life to do so, I'm still young enough to have one. I wanted one more chance, one more opportunity to create the family I had always imagined. And there he was, interested, available, pursuing me, wanting me, not asking me to prove myself, not asking me to compete, just wanting me. And after years of struggle, practicality began to look a lot like love. The truth is, I wasn't evaluating him solely as a romantic partner. I was evaluating a future. Let's tell the truth. I was evaluating a future. Could we build a home? Is he the one I saw in the vision? Could we raise a family? Could we create stability? Those questions carried more weight than chemistry, more weight than passion, maybe even more weight than love. I was numb. And there is another truth here that is even harder to admit. But after the first marriage, I needed control. Not because I was manipulative and not because I wanted power over anyone, but because I knew what it felt like to have none. I had lost so much financially, emotionally, spiritually, that I had to fight hard to rebuild my life, to willingly place myself in a position where I felt powerless again. Oh, no, 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 no. So when I look back now, I can admit something I could not have admitted then. Part of what attracted me to this relationship was that it felt manageable. He looked intimidating enough to stand between me and the harassment I was receiving from my first husband, but gentle enough that I could remain in charge of my own life. I wasn't looking for a man who would challenge my walls. I was looking for a man whose presence solved several immediate problems where we were both single parents. We both had children. We spent more time talking about parenting than dating. Honestly, that should have been a red flag. It really should have. It seemed wise, right? It seemed like we were doing the right thing. We were concerned about our kids. Yes, we are. We were trying to build a family before we had even built a relationship. I was the designated driver, not because he was drunk or anything like that, but listen, he didn't have a license. I drove everywhere, all the time. I taught him how to drive. We didn't date, not really, not ever. There was no dating before we decided to join. We functioned, we cooperated, we partnered, we became the Brady Bunch. And somehow I convinced myself that was enough. Part of that was because I saw his potential. I've always seen potential in people, sometimes to my benefit and sometimes to my detriment. I don't look at people as opportunities. I look at who they might become, who they're on their way to being. And what I was doing, whether I knew it or not, was pardoning him for the places where he did not meet me. I kept telling myself what mattered was his heart, that what mattered was who he could become, that what mattered was the future we would build. So when he eventually proposed, I said yes. I thought I was saying yes to a husband. But looking back, I think I was saying yes to possibility. And the rest of that story is what comes next. You've been listening to Teracota Chronicles. And if something in my story resonated with you, if it mirrored your life, your questions, or your own awakening, I hope it reminds you you are not alone. I'm not here to perform or present a polished version of myself. What I'm offering is honesty. And if you choose to stay with me, this story is still unfolding. I'll return with the next part. Be open, be well, and be at peace until we meet again.